If you're going to take away the physical media, drop the price in digital games. It is not that hard of a concept to understand. Hey there. Welcome back to SideQuest Thinking. Today, I want to talk about something you probably heard a lot about, the physical gaming debacle or physical release debacle, with PlayStation not dropping any physical media past 2028 or when that year comes, and with GTA 6 coming out without any launch discs, regardless of whether they come out with one later or not. I kind of want to get to the point or get deeper on that, kind of talk about, why gaming companies have always hated physical media. What we're seeing now really isn't much of a new thing. It's something that's always been happening in the background of gaming, and we're kind of seeing the head of it now. So let's jump into it here. And today, just to keep you abreast of your time, not to waste your time, I'm going to talk about a couple things here. Specifically, secondhand markets and gaming companies that hate them, the cost of production being a problem, especially more so recently. Used games competing with newer games, consumers having options. Games aren't being sold as finished products, so the used market doesn't work if you only can sell a disc with half a game on it, and then the company can't let you download it. And short-term revenue ultimately trumping the long-term ecosystem health of an IP. So let's jump into it here. Starting with going back to I'm going to start backwards here. The short-term revenue ultimately is a problem, or I guess the short-term revenue vision that companies have is ultimately going to be, a problem for the long-term health of any IP, game, show or otherwise, right? Especially when we've kind of noticed companies take the quickest buck over and over again, kind of routinely, right? It's not necessarily that they're taking the buck because they need it, because at this point we kind of know that these companies don't really need the money. For GTA 6, for example, they're going to make $1 billion from this game, and we know that for a fact. They made $1 billion from the last one. They're just going to make it from this one faster, I'm assuming, with the way pre-orders for a game with no gameplay and no disc is kind of flying off the shelves right now, the digital shelves, I guess. We know they're going to make that money. They know they're going to make that money. So why are they continually, making choices that are short term instead of long term for the health of the IP, the health of the game when it comes to what the consumers see, right? It's just a short term revenue trap that we're all, dealing with, especially under capitalism. That's just the way things work. That's the way companies decide to run things, because the quicker the buck, the better, the better the deal, I guess. And that's really the main issue. They're not really prioritizing long-term health of the IP, of the community that they're creating with the game, the game itself, the system, none of that. They're not really considering it. I don't think it's too much on the table to be considered in the first place. So with that being said, that's the one reason that we're kind of dealing with this physical thing. It's just in the short term, it costs way less money to drop a game digitally with no disc than it would to craft a creative disc like we're used to getting with older game systems and consoles that can kind of be treasured for their own individual aspect of the property, the physical medium, right? And then I guess going back to another point here, games aren't really being sold as finished products like I was stating earlier. The games that we have now, even without the physical aspect of it, they're kind of being sold as bits and pieces of a full game, as opposed to just being a full game like we're used to getting. Granted, we can get bug fixes on a game kind of day one. We have the day one patch, which, makes sense in this day and age, but it doesn't really make up for the fact that the game's not complete to begin with, at least to me. And I'm not saying that games before were perfect. They weren't. A lot of games kind of got released without any fixes, or just as they were, with bugs and everything included, with no hope of getting that fixed. And we know that all too well. We're all gamers here. There's a couple games that I love from PS2 era that are just trash mechanically. They don't work well. But, that's part of that game's identity. The people playing that game, like me, for example, have, created an identity with that game because that was the finished product. That's the way the game is in that state. And we can talk about game of the year releases or, remasters or what have you. That's a separate conversation. But for the version of the game that people got, that still counts. It still does count. Ocarina of Time, for example, was an old game that we all know and love, and the N64 version of that is special because of what it accomplished in the context of what it was created. Furthermore, that game, for example, was able to spin off into Majora's Mask, one of my favorite games, but it's because of reused assets. It was not a cheap copy, but it was something, And going back to the physical media point of it, because I'm drifting a bit, the media of the Majora's Mask being super identical to Ocarina of Time, and then that just being the way that that product was for a long time up until 3DS era, I want to say, was a part of the identity of that game. The physical media, the same type of cartridge that Ocarina of Time came on. It was granted they were on the same system, but the art from it, the models used in game from the other physical thing, it's just a part of that package. It's a part of that state of the game. So that game is finished, it's shipped out, and we all know it as the clone that kind of grew out of the shadow of Ocarina of Time with its own identity. But that's a part of that game's story. And without the physical media being a part of that, we're going to lose a lot of that. I feel like we're going to lose a lot of it. It's going to be a whole bunch of stories of, oh, I played this game on PSN when it was out, but that game in the version I played it in doesn't exist anymore for whatever reason. It got pulled from the shop. It got taken down for other reasons. It's incompatible with current systems, so it can only run on, there's a bunch of things that can happen to it. This is the only game that we can't really account for compared to physical media, for example. And we're going to lose a lot of that, I feel like, in the coming age of getting rid of physical media. And one of the more important parts about that point, I feel like, is just that the secondhand market can't really exist when we're not selling finished products, because nobody's going to buy what we know to be a half-finished game on a disc or a repository file on a disc, when if we try to play that game, the company's going to block it because it already got interacted with one time with the first person that essentially had the game and tried to sell it. That's just not going to work. And that brings us to another point here as far as it goes for why corporations or game companies really don't want to pull the plug on physical media, And it's mainly because, like, it's not really putting money into their pockets. Like, kind of like I was hinting at with the used game consumer option here. Because once you buy the game once, that's how they get paid. They get paid that one time. If the game is $70, $80, or let's use Grand Theft Auto as an example again. If you buy the deluxe edition for Grand Theft Auto 6 once, not counting any microtransactions, not counting any releases or remasters that may come out for it in the future, you bought that game once for $100. That's what Rockstar's getting out of you, is that $100. Now, if you beat the game or were unenthused about Grand Theft Auto 6 or were just bored with it and your little brother wanted to play it, if it was physical, which I wish it was, and the way things worked back in the prior decades, you could just give him the copy of the game and he can play it, no problem. He has the physical media. That's where the game is. You play the game. Now, they would have to come play on your system. You'd have to get a whole separate set of accounts to try to play games with them. Even with that being the case, you would still have to buy the game a second time, especially as a digital copy for their account, because there's all these weird bars and restrictions, when it comes to people sharing digital games. Even game share for PlayStation, at least, which is mainly what I'm focusing on here, you kind of have to have a separate PS5 to do that, the PS4 to do that, a whole separate system to run the game share. It's not like you can run a game share from account to account, which I can see why they would do that, for piracy reasons or whatever. But like at the end of the day, their overcorrection for something that happens in a minority of things really hurts us as consumers. It doesn't do much for us. It hurts us. Again, it hurts us as consumers. We're buying a product that's not really ours to own. And, gaming was one of the things where owning your product was a part of the culture. I was hitting that earlier with the version of the game. It's a part of the culture to own the disc, to own the collectibles. It's a part of the collector culture, that has developed around and within gaming. So them pulling the physical media from this is going to drastically change the identity of gaming going forward. And it's kind of like, like not really in the best way, I feel like, at least, And I guess the last point as to why we probably know that they're going to do away with physical media for the most part, it's just because of the cost of production, which, okay, yeah, I'll throw them a bone, I guess. Cost of production was always a problem. It's always something to factor in, but especially now with tariffs and all these other taxes and just the cost of goods rising in general, yeah, okay, maybe physical media is asking for too much, but I'm going to argue against that even and say that if I'm giving you $100 for a game, I need something to go with that. Or hell, even like if the physical printing of the disc is a problem to the point where it's becoming infeasible for you to do that, that's understandable. Again, there's tariffs, there's shortages of equipment and resources to print and make these discs and yada yada yada, all of this stuff. Why is the digital game still the same price? Can I can I get an answer for that, or is it? Are we just gonna keep playing? Y'all just gonna keep playing in my face? Because that's what really does it for me when it comes to the physical aspect of things. If we're purely talking the physical disc, the thing you get when you buy a game, this and that, and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. If you're gonna take away the physical media, drop the price in digital games. It is not that hard of a concept to understand. Like Nintendo's doing it to a degree, and I feel like that should have been the norm from jump. Because if I'm buying a game, I've always kind of felt like this with digital games. I'm kind of going off trail. I'm gonna wrap this up here, but like if I'm buying a digital game at all, why is it the same price as me going to the store and getting a physical game? You know, maybe I save $5 on the bus pass, but not really, because you still tax the game when you buy it digitally anyway. So you're not really ducking anything. You're not saving any money. The only thing I'm paying you for at this point is convenience, and it's not that convenient at this point. It's not that convenient. I really wish we can get back to a time where this stored the game so my system could take a breather. Y'all only giving us 500 gigabytes in a console off the reg. You know, throw us a bone. But anyway, they're not going to. We know that. I'm just voicing my opinions here, and this is why I think that we're in the pickle we're in now. To wrap it all up, is they don't like secondhand markets, because why would we ever be able to have consumer options? The cost of production is, something they can do away with to write off on their books. We still have to shoulder the cost of production, even with there's being no product being produced, right? No physical product being produced. The used games compete with newer games. So if a new game comes out and you want to play your old game, too bad. Go play the new one, obviously. Games aren't being sold as finished products, so the secondhand market kind of collapses in on itself if you let it do its thing for long enough. And ultimately, short-term revenue trumps long-term ecosystem health. They don't care about how this game performs over time. They just care about that money that they can get right now. And we know that. So if you were looking for an answer, there's my answers. Throw it in the comments and let me know how you feel about what I raised up. If you've gotten this far, go ahead and throw a disc emoji into the comment section. Let me know how you feel about it. Much appreciate y'all, and thanks for dropping by on some side quest thinking. Can't wait to see you in the next side quest here.